From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher. Their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher. Our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Skripchuk. And our Batman, the master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical, our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission, to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Captain's Log Supplemental.
So, Bill, guess what?
What?
We did the Sentinel. We did the Sentinel.
We did.
How
did you like it?
You know what? We were talking about the Sentinel.
We have.
It was great. We understood watching how the Sentinel works, but we finally got it into our car, and I got to tell you, that was really awesome. I was able to see every one of my mistakes.
We have hours of them.
We have hours of my mistakes,
Right.
but we have hours of good stuff too, which is awesome. It actually showed us the speed. Did it show us where we were on track?
We were streaming it
We were streaming it live.
We're boring billions of people across the world.
But it was pretty incredible. Plus, on it, you're able to put your insignia, your logos on your app also, and the clarity was amazing. It was really easy to put in, easier
easy.
than I thought it was.
I know, you kept making a big deal out of it. I'm like, it's really not that hard. Until we focused on it, it wasn't too bad. And then we got some help.
No.
It was pretty easy.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
You know what? I like the stream because some of the tracks we go to don't have great cell phone coverage, but it's got a USB stick backup. So I just uploaded the high quality video without the cellular interruption. So if you watched us earlier and said, wow, they got from there to there really quickly, you can watch the real video and see that no, we didn't. It's just a cell phone went out. But
yeah. So the learning curve for me, obviously, I'm slightly techno-Amish.
Slightly.
When it comes to the wiring and stuff like that, but we get it in and I love it. We were able to sit there right at the track and watch what we were doing in the car. And that was amazing.
Which was good because if you have a problem with your radio, you can tell, if something is going on that you need to know about. Like a couple times we've had cars come in and we didn't know they were broken. And I know it's hard to imagine one of our cars being broken, but whatever. But you can watch the video, and even with the cell phone coverage we had at that particular event, it was like a 30-second delay. So it wasn't bad. And you can compare multiple drivers because you have each of the stints are broken up. So we got to work on not only our driving, but if we wanted to, we could work on our pit stops and see exactly what we do. And there's some things that we need to talk about as a team. And it was pretty good. Like I said, it takes me, once we got the wiring hooked up for the power, I probably could go from an empty shell to a full up setup running Sentinel. I could probably do that in like 20 minutes. So you could literally install it in a car before a race. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And we got to see the driver and the front windshield. And if we want to, we can have three. We can see backwards. Or one of the guys we were going to work with at the upcoming event, he said, could you put a camera on the driver's eyes so we could see what they're looking at? I said, why, yes, I can. Haven't done it yet, but I'll figure it out. We've got time.
Well, I love it.
All right. Very well. That sounds like I can buy another one then. Woo!
Dominating with Dawson.
Miss Vicki. You know what you need for Dominating with Dawson?
Who do I need?
You need a Dawson, but
I don't.
We don't have a Dawson.
We don't have a Dawson. That's okay.
Do we have anybody?
We have a Jeremy.
Oh, we do? I didn't see him.
I know.
We do. I'm here.
He was hiding behind his beard, his luscious man hair. So Jeremy, otherwise known as Luscious, with Ben not here, we usually talk about driving and racing and all kinds of things with Ben, but as any longtime listener knows, Ben hates working on a car. So since you're good at it, we thought we'd have some.
I don't know about that.
Well, you fixed most of the trash we brought to a track, so we'll take that. And we thought we'd take some Dominate with Dawson's and do some more mechanical inclined Dominate with Dawson's while you were around, if you're willing to play our little silly little home game.
Hey, let's play.
All right, very well. Miss Vicki, do you want to start this one? Do you want to?
How about you start this one?
All right, very well. So, Mr. Jeremy, I've seen many shirts related to what is it? Suck, squeeze, blow, or something like that. I don't know.
What?
I'm telling you, something. I think they're talking about like tequila shots or something, but they might be talking about cars. Are they talking about cars?
I think they're more talking about tequila shots.
Oh, all right. Well, let's talk about tequila shots. Jeremy, what tequila do you need now? No, let's keep this one PG friendly, family friendly.
Mm-hmm.
So I have often heard, including my poor T-shirt joke, all you need to do to get your car to run is have air, spark, and fuel. And then Mr. Honda always says and time and timing. What do you think about this? Is that it? Is that all I need?
Yeah. Break down that when you're diagnosing a car.
So obviously there's a lot more to it than that.
Like metal.
But, right. Those things need to be present in order for a vehicle to run, in order for a motor to run.
This could be a lawnmower, could be a race car, could be whatever.
Could be any motor.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have those elements in order for that motor to run. Now, getting those elements is different in every single vehicle, manufacturers, that kind of stuff. Let's take El Jefe, for example. El Jefe has a distributor that is on the back side of the motor, goes up to a cap and rotor, goes into spark plug wires all the way over to each individual spark plug, all 6 of them. And that is how El Jefe, that Chevrolet V6, gets spark. Let's take a Volkswagen or an Audi, for example, because I know those.
I'm shocked we're going to a Volkswagen now.
Or BMW, that we all have BMW.
So
they get their spark a little differently. They have what is called a coil pack. So you have your spark plug in your cylinder head, then you have a coil pack that is attached to it and gets information electronically, and that's how they get spark.
Is that like for the home gamers? Is that like having 6 distributors in a 6-cylinder car?
That's like having 6 individual distributors, kind of, but not really.
I know.
Controlled electronically as opposed to rotationally.
Schmancy. That sounds like more fun. More things to go wrong.
Well, it's a lot easier, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have a car that's kind of running a little bit rough, and you happen to have a scan tool and you have a cylinder X misfire, it's very simple to just swap coil packs. And if the misfire changes, now you have a bad coil pack, and just replace that coil pack and you're good to go.
Sounds like I need a spare distributor or a spare coil packs when I go to the track.
Absolutely. It's always good to bring those.
Okay. All right.
In terms of air, they all, draw in air.
So what would no air be? Like, how could you get no air? Like a clogged filter or a...
No air, you could have a clogged filter. You could have
like a throttle body.
You could have a throttle body that doesn't want to open.
Okay.
Which would create a situation where you wouldn't have any air.
But that's usually lower likelihood than the others.
Correct.
Okay.
Air is very, that's probably the least thing you're ever going to check. It's always going to be something different typically. Fuel, you have your fuel tank, you have fuel lines running to a filter, probably either after or before the pump, depending on if you have an in-tank filter or a pump or an external pump. running up into the fuel rail that gives each individual injector its fuel.
What's a fuel rail? For the
Fuel
home
rail
gamers,
is that
home gamers.
Fuel rail is that fun, shiny thing that all of your injectors attach to that go into your cylinder head, into the combustion chamber. So 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, whatever it is, 8-cylinder. You have your fuel lines come up into the fuel rail. You'll have a fuel pressure regulator on that controls your pressure to the fuel rail to the injectors. And each individual injector will spit fuel into the combustion chamber for the vehicle to run.
So it's like a manifold for fuel on the input side.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
You could call it like the intake manifold brings the air into the engine, and the fuel rail brings the fuel into the engine.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like I need to have. We're going to do a spares episode soon. Sounds like I need to have maybe a spare fuel pump if that's one of the problems with my car, and possibly a fuel filter.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. If you find that those are, they're typically, you don't have an issue with those until they fail. So it's always a good idea to have a spare one.
Okay.
Inject. Like it happens. It's a mechanical item and they fail.
I have to. You broke up with just a smidgy with internet stuff, but I had an injector fail in the open position in a car that I'm not happy about.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, that's always fun.
No, it's not fun. It's not fun.
Your fuel mileage went down quite a bit.
My bill went up quite a bit.
Yeah, that's not fun.
No. You know what the best part about it was? I bought the new engine to replace the engine that I had trashed, and the new engine was worse than the engine that I had trashed.
Oh, geez.
No.
Oh, yes.
That's no bueno.
Oh, no. So, engine number 3.
Oh.
Now, if you have all 3 of those items to make a vehicle run, one of the other things, if it does start, that you have to have perfect is your timing.
Why?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of motors are what we call interference motors. And if your timing is not correct, what interference means is that if a valve is completely open and a piston is at top dead center, they're going to make contact. They're going to kiss a little bit.
Not in a good way?
Not in a good way. It's never a good way when the piston and the valve kiss. So your timing has to be on in order for that motor to run appropriately and not cause any internal damage if they are what we call an interference motor.
So when you say your timing has to be on, close is good enough, right?
Close is not good enough.
No?
Close could get your motor running. But you have to have, so each manufacturer gives you timing marks on your camshaft, your crankshaft, your intermediate shaft, if you have one. If you have a belt, driven timing motor. Other ones give you the same marks, but they could be chain driven.
Like my Mini.
Yes, just like the Mini or the BMW.
Or the BMW.
So those marks all have to be lined up, and every car has a different sequence of doing it. I just found out recently that Honda does it completely backwards than everybody else, which I don't really understand why, but sure. So you have to have the sequence of everything lined up correctly, and put your either chain or your belt on and in the correct tension in order for it to stay where it needs to stay. So those marks stay where they need to stay so the motor can actually run.
So you have a pulley or a gear on the end of the, I guess that would be still a pulley, but you can literally be one tooth off either way, and that's no bueno.
And that's no bueno. It may not interfere. Like if it's an interference motor, they may not, it may not cause a piston to make contact or shall we say kiss a valve. But if it does start, it may run really, really rough. So you really need to have your timing set appropriately and your tension needs to be correct, because if your tension is too loose, your timing belt, I'm not sure so much on the chains, but if you have a rubber belt, they can jump timing, which means that you have switched where it's supposed to be. Your teeth have changed where they're supposed to be on the gear.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So we're not going to affect time. Well, wait a minute. Let me rephrase that. We're not going to affect timing relative camshaft and relative to each other with the timing chain without taking the engine apart. But the timing is also affected if there's a distributor, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just an extra element that you have to have. An extra item that has to be timed correctly, because if your distributor shaft is not timed correctly, it's not going to give you the spark in the correct timing that you need in order for that motor to fire and to run.
So that's, in that case, we're talking about electrical timing, not just mechanical timing.
Correct.
Miss Vicki, how are you doing with all this? You copy?
I do. So in translation, when you're trying to start the car, determining one thing versus the other. I know that's what it takes, but now diagnosing and using all those things together, how does that pan out?
Well, so what I like to say is you go back to the basics, right? And these are the basics in order for a car to run. So let's say you put a new motor in your car, and for some reason it doesn't want to turn over or it doesn't want to start. You have to go back to the basics and check all these things. Let's say, for instance, the Honda, the Civic, prior to pit race this year,
Right.
Everything was put together, put in the car, and it didn't want to start.
Nope.
So nope, it didn't want to start. And it would create a lot of pressure, internal pressure. And it would, you would hear it puff out through the exhaust and through the intake because it was creating pressure, but it just didn't want to start. So we went back to the basics. We checked that all the electrical connectors were connected
And they were.
from the harness. We checked to make sure that it had spark. We checked to make sure that no airway was blocked. We checked to make sure it was getting fuel. And then we checked the timing. Now, I'm going to admit.
We didn't check, Jeremy. I know.
I'm going to admit, me not knowing anything about Hondas, we checked timing. Timing was off because what we determined was that the tensioner pulley was loose, so timing had jumped a tooth, which was fine. So we redid that, got that taken care of, and we still couldn't get the car to run. We had all the elements, something wasn't running.
You lost hair about this, Jeremy. You lost
What's
hair.
that?
You lost hair about this.
Oh, I lost the very few hairs that I had left on my head. That's right. Come to find out, the wires were correct on the distributor, but they were not correct in each individual cylinder.
Yes.
So the cylinders were backwards on the Honda.
Left to right instead of right to left.
Correct.
Yep.
Which I had no idea. And I never even, be honest with you, I never even assumed to look at that just because they were already there and we already had spark. Go figure. There's the perfect example of that's not just electrical, but that's also timing, because the distributor sends spark at the correct time to the correct cylinder for the motor to fire. Now, once that was fixed, and
ran like a top,
it started. And
Yep.
it ran.
And you were so frustrated on your long drive home.
I was very frustrated on my long drive home.
Indeed.
Yep.
But we figured it out. And now I know a little bit more about Hondas and how complicated they are, even though everybody thinks they're simple. But again,
they're simple. They're just different.
It depends on what you work on. If it was a Volkswagen, I could have done it with my eyes closed. I grew up working on them, always have, always driven them, never done Hondas. First Honda I ever worked on was the cookie car.
Cookie car.
You learn new stuff every single day.
All right. So we're gonna wrap this one up with the simple thing. We're coming up to a car's not running or it's running poorly. First thing we think is air, fuel, spark, timing, right?
and electrical.
And electrical. Okay.
Yes.
What is but everybody's got their own method, right? What's your method?
It depends. Like I said, when we first got down to check the Honda, it wasn't running. First thing I looked at was to make sure that every single electrical connector in the engine bay, the harness, everything was connected correctly, so that we eliminated the element of electrical.
And grounds.
And we went on to check.
I noticed you did grounds too.
Yes, grounds as well. You need to have grounds. Everything has to be grounded or it's not going to run. And then we went to, I think we went to timing. And then once timing was done, we went to spark. We checked, air, that none of the air passages were blocked. Throttle body was stuck. We freed that up, put that back in, which that is a perfect example of what could prevent you from having the air that you need to start the engine.
Right. And then you did fuel. I don't remember if that was before spark or after. I think
fuel was probably the second thing we checked, right?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was after distributor and electrical connection. Yeah.
But it all depends. It depends on what's the simplest thing, right? If you can hear the fuel pump running, you probably have fuel. So let's check something else first. But the sequence of it really, as long as you have them, as long as you check all of them and make sure you have them, the sequence to me doesn't really matter. I just want to make sure that they're all there before we really try to start the engine.
So one thing I've noticed is that some of the people that we deal with who are more mechanically inclined than us, which is basically everyone, they tend to go in a different order than everybody else. But I think, and this is a theory, I think it depends on what car you're used to working on and what's usually wrong with that car as the sequence that you usually go. Is that accurate?
I would completely agree with that. Okay. I would completely agree with that. Yes.
Okay. Because there's no real right or wrong. It's just, this is what I found over my history. Blah, blah, blah.
Right. Okay. Right. Now with El Jefe, when we have a running issue with El Jefe, we know that those Chevrolet 4.3 V6s had a lot of distributor issues. So we go right to distributor spark before we check anything else. So Indeed. Again, like you said, it depends on what it is and what you're used to working on as to where you start and where you finish.
Okay. So Miss Vicki, next time our car won't start, you think we got a chance?
I think we have a chance. I am starting to understand what's going on. I am.
Perfect.
You know what, Jeremy?
I do not.
I'd still count on phone a friend coming into a play here. So,
and I will be phoning a friend probably for the next 2 years.
Hey, and that's totally fine. As long as my phone's around, and as long as Dr. Honda has his phone.
That's right. Oh, there's a much longer list of people we call.
Oh yeah.
I know.
It is not for lack of trying myself before I have to phone a friend.
I can promise you, I know that.
Yes.
You try very hard before you make those phone calls.
All our friends who we pester seemingly endlessly, we apologize ahead of time, but we have really tried.
We have tried everything.
Yep.
So,
you're not quite the last resort, but when we call, it's usually like, okay, I'm going to drive this car over the cliff. And
I make a lot of phone calls too. I mean, I've been working on cars since I was 14 years old, but I still make a lot of phone calls.
Yeah. Always in training.
Always.
All right. Jeremy Hall, you have completed your Dominator Dawson on air, fuel, spark, and timing.